Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger has told openly, over and over on television, I don't know where our Christian young people were when it was going on, that when he was in jail before the Stones was ever formed, he sold his soul to the devil. That's impossible, but he did it anyway. He sold his soul to the devil to become the leading rock group in the nation, plus get out of prison. He is the leading rock group in the nation, in the world. He has wrote songs praising the devil. And I know the devil gave it to him because the devil always thinks on himself. And in one song that Jagger wrote, he said, "It's not that I fool you who I am." Everybody knows who the devil is. It's the nature of my game that's confusing you. And this is the way it is with Satan. See, we've got a little set of rules that Satan's supposed to obey, but he don't obey them. It's like the Illuminati. They own countries. They don't pick sides in a war. They cause a war and put both countries against each other, even though both countries belong to them. They don't have sides. They have a purpose. Satan has every religion except that which is under the blood of Jesus. That's where the confusion of the game is. We try to rationalize things good or bad, and we can't do that. We rationalize things Jesus or the devil.
First, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions, Johnny. A few years ago, I became interested in the subject of Freemasonry, and I'm wondering, is the witchcraft initiation anything like the Masonic initiation?
First level witchcraft and first level Masonry initiation is identical. The only difference is that my wrist was cut and I signed a blood pact, and that I was nude and they are clothed. That's the only difference. The words, the acts, the tying, the blindfold, the charge, everything, even the pledge of secrecy is exactly the same. There's no difference. And the sixth level initiation of witchcraft blood sacrifice is the same initiation to the highest level of Masonry, the 35th. It's called the Rite of the Warrior on the Block.
35th degree.
The 31st degree, which most of our politicians are 35th degree Masons. Yeah.
Satanism practices a form of sacrifice in some groups. Witches practice it more. And when you get up into a higher level, 4th, 5th, or 6th, you find out that the power rests with blood sacrifice. You become what is called a human chalice. In other words, you are proving to Satan through the blood and the death of this person that you are sold totally out to him, although they don't believe in Satan. You're proving it to Lucifer. The things that always puzzled me was if we were worshiping a God of love, peace, and joy, why were we killing somebody to worship him? It was one of the things I could never understand. But this is the thing that goes on. One of the books most interesting that proves it, I'm saying this for witches that are present, not the Christians, leave it alone, is the Aleister Crowley library, where he was involved in human sacrifice, and he was a master magician or witch, or wizard, whatever term they want to use. So it does go on. And in fact, to become a 6th level witch, you must perform.
One thing real quick here. Satanists believe in Satan. Witches do not, and there is a difference. Witches are taught that Satan and hell is a lie. I was saved for hours before I ever knew there was a devil. Good. Halloween had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. Christians shouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. It comes from the word shaman, which means the day the dead come back and talk. It was invented by witches, capitalized on by the Catholics, but nothing in it has to do with Christians. Nothing. Who wants to celebrate a day that witches sacrifice thousands of people throughout the world on? Yes. White magic and black magic is a Catholic term. When they were burning people at the stake for being witches, they wanted to protect themselves that practiced it. So they invented the term white witchcraft, or white magic, and black magic. Witches, in their books, will tell you that it doesn't exist, as it was mentioned in Star Wars. And yet, when they're trying to convert a Christian, they will say they're white witch and not a black witch. And yet they'll tell you in their books it doesn't exist, which means they'll say anything to convert you. But there is no such thing. The devil is evil, and you can't whitewash him or anything he does. You can call it ESP, but it's still witchcraft. Yeah. Hypnosis is of the devil.
Only from the Rothschild Tribunal in London, which they claim they take their orders directly from Lucifer.
In fact, the reason that the Rothschilds even still reside in London is because England is considered to the witches the same as Palestine is considered to us. It is the Holy Land. You take pilgrimages there. You stop off and kiss the stones on the Rothschild mansion for luck and so on and so forth. If by some chance you happen to meet a Rothschild and he gives you a blessed sign or a blessed bee, then your whole life is set. It's that type of nature. But it has nothing to do. There is an interesting thing, though, I'd like to throw in. A lot of witches do wear the thing called the Star of David. David was long dead before that star was ever drawn. His son drew it. And it's called the hexagram, and the word to curse or to hex comes from the hexagram. And when witches practice magic, they draw a five-pointed star to stand in, and they call demons up in the evil sign, what we call the Star of David. So before Christians start tying it around their neck, that's called the demon star, or the Death Star. And that's why it was drawn. Any other questions? Yeah.
Question, can you tell us about UFOs?
Now, and my sister's connection, there's a story that Jack Schick had told me first 3 years ago that I had told him. My sister, before my wife came around, used to be leader of the state of Ohio, the high priestess there, of the whole state. And her little pastime was calling up, supposedly filling the sky with UFOs and watching everybody's excitement. And some of the most outstanding sightings were in the early 70s in Ohio. And she used to laugh about it because she'd be standing in a circle out in the field somewhere calling up demons. And that's all they were angels of light playing games in the sky.
When I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism.
War on terrorism, war against terrorism, global war on terror, global terrorism, global terrorism, global terrorism. September 11th, 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 September 11th. Global terrorism, 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 terrorism. The evil terrorists, 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 terrorists.
Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern.
Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein, Saddam, 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 Saddam.
As long as the threat from Iran persists, we will go forward with a missile defense system that is cost-effective. And when the Iranian threat is eliminated, we will have a stronger basis for security.
The next enemy was asteroids. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card.
I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held. Suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together.
And over and over and over, during the 4 years that I knew him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
Today, most people have come to the very clear realization, I think, that things aren't quite as you've been told. And the question then just becomes is, how big is the lie? And the truth is, it's bigger than most people can imagine.
Remember, a demon Get the little spooky picture. There are a fallen angel, an unclean spirit. They can assume any form or go into anything except a Christian who walks in the Spirit all the time. Know any? Or in other words, a Christian who keeps it under the blood and so on. But they can assume forms, including spacemen or solid objects like flying saucers or so on. That's why when they appear on the radar scope and a jet gets up there, they vanish right in front of the pilot's eye because they're nothing but a spirit. I don't want people to listen to me and walk out of here and just accept the things I have. I kind of like it when people go out here and say, boy, he's nuts. Because they'll go and they'll try and research to prove that I'm wrong. And the more they research, the more they start believing me. It is impossible to research history and to research the conspiracy and to research the Illuminati without coming away a solid believer. When I was saved, I knew absolutely nothing about the Bible except some basic teaching that I had picked up by accident when I was about 10 years old in a Nazarene church. When the people that I was being raised by that were in witchcraft found out that I had went to this church, they, as they say, blew their stack. And that was that for going and hearing anything about the Word of God. So everything I know about the Bible I've learned in the last 5 years. Because in a day and age when we see so much happening around us, we lose sight of who's behind what is happening around us. We lose sight that if it is good and positive, it's the Lord, and if it's evil and rebellious, it's the devil. And we lose sight of really who our enemy is in this warfare that we're in. So I'd like to leave this with you. I'm sure many of you know it, and if you don't, I recommend that you mark it in your Bible and learn it by heart. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. How many of you were raised in a Christian home? Well, I was a homegrown witch. From the time that I was 5 years old, I knew nothing but witchcraft. I would have known it sooner, but they didn't discuss it with me. They take you very, very young. And even before they start talking about the so-called positive aspects of witchcraft, they talk about the negative aspects of Christianity. So that being a Christian is a miracle, not because I want it out of witchcraft, but that I would consider Christianity the only way out. Because they brainwash you from very early childhood that the Christian is the most evil being or creature in the universe. That he wants nothing more than to take the everyday witch out and shoot them, burn them, hang them, whatever he can do, and that they are the most hateful beings that ever existed, on the same level as maybe Adolf Hitler. I grew up this way. When I was 13, I was taken into what is called the outer court to be trained as a priest in witchcraft. When I was 18, I was initiated a high priest. That would have made me the pastor. At the same time, I became draft exempt. I did not have to go into service, but a bunch of us smart aleck young, I have to correct the pastor, not warlocks, but wizards and witches, went into the army. So I went on in, along with a lot of others. And I never did anything, I guess, halfway. I got in Vietnam, found out I liked Vietnam so well, I was willing to re-enlist. In fact, I'd already signed the papers to stay for another tour in Vietnam when I became wounded in the last month of the first tour, and I was shipped back to the United States. My time was almost up, so I was discharged, and the same day I re-enlisted. I asked for Vietnam, and they said because of my wounds that hadn't totally healed yet, I couldn't go to Vietnam yet, so I got Germany. Now, I had re-enlisted for 6 years, and until the time of my re-enlistment, I always thought that witchcraft was just witchcraft. There was nothing more to witchcraft than just casting spells, and that we were smarter than the Christians and other religions because we really knew who the gods were, and we were born with special powers because our ancestors had passed them down to us, and all the little stories they like to tell us. This is the way I grew up, and this is all I believed in, was just that there were mighty gods and we were special people. We were their priests and priestesses. Until I re-enlisted. I went to Germany, spent a month home, went to Germany, spent another month. 2 months out of a 6-year enlistment. One night while taking drugs and drinking, I shot and killed an officer in downtown Stuttgart. Now if there's one thing that the Army does not like, it does not like its sergeants killing its officers. They have a quick cure for that. They threw me in solitary confinement. And I was sitting back waiting for her to get all these big witches together to cast spells on the judges and make all the officers that were trying me think I was a real nice guy. and that it was self-defense and everything was going to be fine. They'd just let me off. Now, that's all that I had ever been taught that witches could do. But 3 days later, my cell door opened there in solitary. I stepped out in the light for the first time in 32 days. I heard some very strange words. You are honorably discharged from the United States Army. And the man that was saying them was a senator by the name of William Saxby. He had a congressman with him named Wiley and about 3 or 4 generals, and they were handing me an honorable discharge. And on the discharge papers, it didn't say I was bad, didn't say that I had been in jail, didn't say anything. It gave me all my time and rank, security clearances that I had in my possession, and didn't explain why I still had over 5 years to go in the United States Army. It just discharged me honorably. So I took it and didn't want to argue with him and left and went back to the States and arrived at my home in Columbus, Ohio. I asked my real mother, I have 2 mothers, foster mother and a real mother. I said, what type of spell is so good that it makes senators and generals do what you want? And it's a really good spell. I'd like to learn it. She just looked at me and said, you just don't understand, do you? She said, we didn't cast a spell on them. They're with us. I said, oh, far out. Senators that are witches. She says, no, they just belong to us. And I didn't understand what she was saying, and I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? You know, I'd like to take my old coat and back over and so on. So she handed me an envelope that had been waiting there. She'd explained that there was one there and one in Los Angeles. They didn't quite know where I was going to show up. I opened the envelope. Very intriguing thing. $2,000 in $100 bills. A lot of money. Also was a one-way plane ticket to New York City. But I flew to New York City and I spent 6 months learning all new witchcraft. Till then I had been taught what most of the teenagers learn. And then all of a sudden for 6 months, this man, Dr. Buckland, unraveled everything and told me there was a one God, where before we believed there was 4. There was one, and his name was Lucifer. And he was very quickly to tell me that wasn't Satan. He didn't want me to get any ideas that Christians could be telling me the truth. I should have thought then that if they had lied to me for almost 18 years, they were probably lying to me now. But I went ahead and believed it. For 6 months, I took lessons in witchcraft that I didn't even know that things could happen that had happened. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles, good old L.A. Can't seem to get away from it. And for 6 months, my foster mother taught me something that your pastor is very familiar with, the political situation of the occult. And all of a sudden, I realized that witchcraft wasn't just spell casting; it had a purpose in mind. But we sat there, and for 6 months I learned the political structure and the history of witchcraft. And then I was taken to Colorado, and I was placed through an initiation into the 6th realm. And this initiation consisted of a blood sacrifice. And from then on I was given a territory of 13 states. This didn't happen to be one of them. This belonged to my foster mother. But I was in charge of all the occult, political, and drug activity in 13 states. You know, they're a little weird. Witches are never going to control the world. And finally, on August the 1st, 1972, things changed. Courier from the London Embassy, a member of our United States State Department, arrived with a courier document pouch sealed with the crest of the State Department, brought it through customs, unopened, nobody could touch it, brought it in to San Antonio, and I was hosting the meeting this time. And it was on Latimus, August the 1st. The man came in, laid the pouch down in the temple room up in the casino building, walked out, and left it. He wasn't to know what was in it. The door was locked, security guards were placed on the outside, and Dr. Buckland took up what's called the Atamé, the witch's ceremonial knife. He slit open the seal, unlocked everything, and took out 6 letters. We'd seen letters like this before, no big deal. He had the crest of the Illuminati, which is on the back of your $1 bill, so you can look at it later. On them, sealed in wax, red wax. The only problem was that the first 4 were standard business. The 5th one was totally different. It's very thick, about 30 pages, and it was handwritten. Now, in the Illuminati, the Rothschilds are not humans. They're not just the richest family in the world. They are gods in human bodies. More or less the counterfeit of what Jesus Christ was when he was on the earth. They're the sons and daughters of Lucifer in human body, and his wife, and so on. So that this council that I was on is the private priesthood of those gods. And when those gods talk, the priests listen and the priestesses listen, then they tell political people. That's why a handful of witches have so much power over so many political people. So we opened this one in Philip Rothschild's handwriting. Dr. Buckland started reading it. It's a chart. It's a step-by-step plan beginning in 1973 at the first of the year to the end of 1980 to take over the world by taking over the United States. Now, before you think that that's impossible, I've watched the news over the past 5.5 years, and they're not only on schedule, they're a year ahead of schedule. So after reading this, I thought, these people are really crazy. You know, crazier and crazier. But I stopped laughing when I read the 6th letter. It was in Philip Rothschild's handwriting, too. Now, before I tell you what's in it, I want to say something. The Mormon doctrine and the witchcraft doctrine are almost identical in how the world began. According to the witches, Lucifer chose his son and his daughter, which were married, to come to the world and lead the rest of his little kids down here. Believe it or not, you're supposed to have landed in a flying saucer. And they landed here, and man was just more or less assuming their shape from apes, and they intermarried with man, and that's how, well, the original people were the witches that arrived, and their children became the witches, and the ones that they didn't marry with are the mortals. And that Adam, who had the ability to turn back into other lives again, like everybody else did not. Because when the evilness of man settled into the garden, and that's why the garden was bad, there's no original sin according to witches. And Lucifer had planned to come and live on this world along with his children, but he couldn't because of all the evilness of man. And when they say that, I almost feel like they want to write Christians sometimes, the way the doctrine goes. But Adam would come back to bring peace to the world and to unpollute it so his father could come back.
And that's when I started getting a little afraid, because when I was 10, as I said, I learned a little about the Bible. It just happened to be all revelations that I learned. And all of a sudden we were discussing a world ruler that would be personally guided by Lucifer, that could gain control of the world supernaturally and take control of people's minds. Of course, they didn't say there was a defense against this. The way they spoke, everybody was affected. They didn't say anything about the blood of Jesus.
And when the 6th letter said, we have found Adam to be in the world, and he is ready to make peace so that his father can return, I knew enough about revelations in the Christian Bible to say, hey, I'm in the wrong camp. And I asked a very stupid question at that moment. I said, isn't this in the Christian Bible? Now, witches teach that the Christian Bible is an absolute lie, created by the god of evil named Jesus. Okay? So when I asked that, I almost got lynched. So I said, well, you know, I'm just kidding. Don't worry about it. I was just joking, trying to lighten things up. They calmed down. You may not think that this message has anything to do with you, but you're missing the whole point. I was in a world where it was impossible to become a Christian, and Jesus made me one.
And this is where I was in 1972 when I met the Lord.